The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Chairman, I've just got another question, which is in relation to the nature of the business that is being transferred, or the assets and liabilities that are being transferred. The way that I read it is the preamble talks about the transfer of certain additional assets and liabilities of Westpac Banking Corporation, being principally assets and liabilities of Westpac Banking Corporation's New Zealand institutional banking business, and the preliminary provisions that we've dealt with too, the purposes talk about Westpac's principally assets and liabilities of their institutional banking business. And then we come to the part that we're dealing with now, which has all of the detail of the transfer, and the Governor-General having to approve the proposal to vest designated assets and liabilities. And the designated liabilities are defined as those that are to vest in Westpac. So we've still got the phrase principally those of the institutional banking business, but I'm just trying to find where that is actually spelt out in detail, what it is that makes up the phrase principally of that nature. And does that then mean narrowly that it can't apply to anything else, and that we could again end up in the situation where if something that is sort of slightly technically outside that definition of institutional banking, that will be back in the House with another piece of legislation? Or is this provision now a slightly more expensive piece of legislation than we had previously? And I guess the question that I've got is that if in this initial stage where the asset and liability class is firmly established and the order in council is made, that then is that it? Can there be no further transfer occurring from one to the other under the provisions of this bill with an additional order in council? And perhaps even if the member and the chair could just refer me to the clause that describes the specific elements of the institutional banking, because I'm sure it's in here, I just can't find it, and I don't know. Is it? Am I missing something, or is it there? Or I don't know whether just a simple reference to a clause chipped across the house might help me find what it is that I'm looking for, but it doesn't look hopeful at this stage. Because that's the question. I suspect he'll take a closure motion at the end of all of this, but I think I'm asking the question for a serious reason, and that is that what I can't quite work out is why in 2006 we didn't have a sufficiently robust framework that allowed this additional order in council to be passed, that it required an additional piece of legislation. But if this then subsequently shows itself to be insufficient to meet the ongoing obligations of the Reserve Bank, will indeed a further piece of legislation be required? Or does this bill allow for an additional order in council to be made? It doesn't, so that's very useful. I got a shake of the head. That may not have been. That's not a recording that Hansard. Perhaps if the member would like to say no, then we could get it on the Hansard record that in fact the shaking of the head did take place. Oh no! Now my colleague's nodding his head, but that's different. I think he's agreeing with me that that's what should happen. So it would be useful if the member and the chair could indeed provide that comfort for me. Now, the other point that I wanted to raise was the transfer of staff, because of course that does happen, transfer of employees under clause 15, where a transferring employee ceases to be an employee of the Westpac Banking Corporation and becomes an employee of Westpac New Zealand on the appointed day. I do understand why this is required. Obviously, if the working in one branch of the corporation, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Leanne.
And if they're transferred over to the new bank, then obviously one wouldn't want those terms and conditions of employment to be diminished by the transfer. But what I'm wondering, and I guess I don't know whether the member and the chair is able to provide this advice, but I wonder whether that then creates some inequity in terms of those that are already working for Westpac New Zealand. And I guess the question I'm asking is there parity between the two organisations in terms of the salaries that they pay their two sets of staff, because it may well be that the transfer under these circumstances may create an internal inequity within Westpac New Zealand, where those that belong to the branch of Westpac Corporation, Banking Corporation, may in fact be on more favourable terms and conditions of employment than their counterparts in Westpac New Zealand, and that there might have been a bit of a transfer there. The other thing that I wondered was whether this in any way impacted, because it's one of the issues that is not raised anywhere in the legislation, and I wondered
Sorry
whether...
to interrupt the honourable member. The time has come for me to leave the chair for the dinner break.
I didn't want to...
This debate is interrupted. I shall resume the chair at 7:30.